Snapshots 4 and 5 for Minecraft 26.3 introduced changes to hack versions while I've been away on a vacation. In this video, we'll look at the changes from both versions. Let's start with some broad changes to the data pack formats. Lots of fields in many areas related to loot tables, predicates, and advancements now accept a namespace ID string in addition to an inline object. I will not be listing them out in detail since they are quite numerous. In addition, element lists now allow mixing references to namespaced IDs with inline defined objects in the same list. In some cases where there were explicit reference types for referencing named elements, those have been removed since they are no longer necessary. This goes for predicates, item modifiers, and slot sources. In other predicate news, the condition field has been renamed to type. The block state property type has been removed, and instead there is now a match block type with more abilities to match block aspects. The ability to use an inline list as shorthand for an all of predicate has been removed. And one new named vanilla predicate has been added called block/fast cooking. The related loot function fields have changed. The conditions field has been renamed to condition, and the function field has been renamed to type. Similarly, in loot pool entries, conditions has been renamed to condition. The functions field has been renamed to modifier and now accepts inline values. All loot entry types now also have the modifier field. In the tag loot pool entry, name has been renamed to items and can now accept multiple item types. The expand field now also works with item modifiers. The loot table entry type now has an expand field, which works the same as for the tag pool entry. The sequence loot function type has changed to have an optional condition field, and the inline list format of a sequence can now also accept namespace ID references. And the set loot table function field name has been renamed to tag. In advancement trigger news, the type field is now mandatory for all trigger definitions. The functionality of using an inline list as shorthand for the all of condition type has been removed. In addition to allowing named IDs or inline values, some fields have also been renamed to plurals, where they now also allow lists of inputs or tags. The bnest destroyed trigger type now has a field called state that matches block state properties. A villager trade changed as well. Given item modifiers has been renamed to given item modifier. For number providers, the type field is no longer optional. There are also a whole number of new vanilla entries in the number provider registry representing the burn time for various items used as furnace fuel, as well as speed multipliers for cooking and brewing. That connects us to some changes to recipes, where cooking recipes for smoker and blast furnaces now have the same cooking times as the corresponding furnace recipes, and those new number providers are used instead. This is all connected using some new item components, starting with the cooking fuel component, which points out two number providers, burn time and speed multiplier. A similar one is brewing fuel, which controls which items can be used as fuel for a brewing stand, which has fields for uses and speed multiplier. Two new item components for signs are sign text front and sign text back, which both have the same format as the sign block entity data fields and which control the text on a sign when placed, and which now also show up in the item tooltip. The waxed component is an empty component that marks that the contents of a block, like a sign, has been waxed. There's a new component for the color of a cushion when placed. The villager food component represents items that villagers can eat, and that villagers will pick up in addition to the villager picks up tag. And finally, the mob visibility component represents how an item that can be equipped makes mobs more or less likely to detect an entity wearing it. Some changes to data as well. Signs no longer execute commands and other click events contained in the sign text by default, and text components on newly placed signs are not resolved by default. There's a new field called Allow Op Features that can be set to restore the previous behavior. Any signs from previous worlds will have that set by default, but new signs need it set explicitly. Block entity data for brewing stands and all furnace variants have also changed to store time data as integers instead of shorts, and there are also new fields controlling the speed and duration of the current operation. In command news, mob positions no longer desync after running a tick sprint. The spread players command now uses the entities can teleport to block tag to determine what blocks are valid destinations. And the right context is now used for providing suggestions for some commands. A couple of fixes have been made for the Apply Impulse Enchantment Entity effect when the player using the item is looking straight up, or when the impulse would make the player hit a block. In tag news, the Brewing Fuel item tag has been removed, and the Cushion Uses Collision Shape block tag has been added for blocks where cushion placement recasts against collision shape instead of interaction shape. Some new environment attributes have been added that replace some old fields inside biomes. Gameplay/natural mob spawning now defines what mobs spawn. And gameplay/creature world gen spawn probability sets the probability that mobs defined in the previous attribute will spawn during generation. The visual/ambient particles environment attribute has also been changed to support interpolation and a new append modifier. Let's wrap up the data pack changes with custom world generation. Aquifers and ore veins are now controlled by settings objects rather than single booleans in noise settings, and a number of fields have been moved into those new objects. The final density of noise settings no longer implicitly adds the beardifier to the final result. That now instead comes from a new density function called beardifier. There are also new density functions for some primitive operations for rounding, as well as subtraction, division, negation, and interpolation. The invert density function has been renamed to reciprocal, and lots of the fields in primitive density functions have been renamed. Another round of hard-coded features have been removed. The Skulk Patch feature has also had some fields removed. On the resource pack side, a bug fix has been made for item models, which now show up properly in the smithing table UI's armor stand. And in shader news, new core shaders have been added for order-independent transparency, and a new OIT always right depth define has been added. All shader includes are now handled by shader C and using hash include instead of hash mod import. And shader inputs and outputs now have to have a location specified in the shader source. The B3D is 021 define has been renamed to render Perl is 021, and there is a new render Perl instance index includes base instance define. And that's all for these pack versions. My name is Sliced Lime. Thank you for watching.